A comprehensive introduction to Immanuel Kant's philosophy. The two branches of Kant's thought, Immanuel Kant, 1724–1804, remains one of the most influential philosophers in history. His work is traditionally divided into two primary branches: theoretical philosophy, which includes metaphysics and epistemology, and practical philosophy, which encompasses ethics and political philosophy. Theoretical philosophy is concerned with the nature of knowledge and the limitations of human understanding, while practical philosophy focuses on human freedom, morality, and political structures. Kant's contributions to both domains have profoundly shaped modern thought. Kant's critique of metaphysics, a significant turning point in Kant's intellectual journey, was his encounter with the writings of David Hume, 1711–1776. Hume's empiricist critique of causality disrupted Kant's prior philosophical commitments and led him to rethink the foundations of knowledge. The dominant philosophical tradition in Kant's time was rationalism, as espoused by figures like Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, 1646–1716, and Christian Wolff, 1679–1750. According to rationalist doctrine, true knowledge could only be derived through pure reason, independent of sensory experience. Empirical knowledge, they argued, was unreliable due to its dependence on subjective human perception. Hume's skepticism challenged this notion, arguing that all knowledge originates in experience and that humans cannot infer necessary connections between events, only repeated associations. If taken seriously, Hume's critique threatened the very possibility of scientific knowledge by undermining the principle of causality. Concerned by these implications, Kant sought to resolve this tension in his Critique of Pure Reason, 1781. Kant's solution was what he called his Copernican revolution in philosophy. Rather than assuming that knowledge must conform to external reality, Kant proposed that our understanding imposes structure upon experience. He argued that certain fundamental concepts, such as space, time, and causality, are not derived from experience, but are instead the conditions that make experience possible. This perspective, known as transcendental idealism, holds that while we can never know things as they are in themselves, noumena, we can attain reliable knowledge of the world as it appears to us, phenomena. The limits of theoretical reason. Kant's distinction between phenomena and noumena delineates the limits of human knowledge. According to his framework, human understanding can only grasp the world insofar as it is structured by innate cognitive faculties. While scientific inquiry is valid within these boundaries, metaphysical speculation about things in themselves, such as the soul, free will, or God, falls outside the scope of possible knowledge. This led Kant to argue that reason must recognize its own limitations. By doing so, he aimed to provide a secure foundation for both empirical science and human knowledge, while simultaneously curbing metaphysical overreach. Kant's moral philosophy. Freedom and duty, Kant's ethical thought, outlined most famously in Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals, 1785, centers on the concept of autonomy. For Kant, morality is based on the principle that rational beings must act according to laws they legislate for themselves. This idea led him to formulate his fundamental moral principle, the categorical imperative, which serves as a universal standard for ethical action. One of its most well-known formulations states, "Act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law." Unlike utilitarianism, which evaluates actions based on their consequences, Kantian ethics insists that moral worth depends on the motive behind an action. A person acts morally not because they seek to maximize happiness, but because they recognize their duty to follow universal moral laws. Additionally, Kant emphasizes the inherent dignity of human beings, arguing that individuals must always be treated as ends in themselves rather than mere means to an end. However, Kant's commitment to both determinism in the natural world and human freedom raises a philosophical dilemma. If all physical actions are determined by causal laws, how can moral responsibility exist? Kant resolves this by distinguishing between two perspectives. As empirical beings in the phenomenal world, we are subject to causality. However, as rational beings in the noumenal realm, we possess free will. This dual aspect allows for moral agency while maintaining a deterministic view of nature. Kant's political philosophy, law, freedom, and the state. Kant's political thought, particularly articulated in the Metaphysics of Morals, 1797, and Perpetual Peace, 1795, is deeply intertwined with his moral philosophy. He maintains that a just political system must be founded on the principle of freedom, which he defines as the ability of individuals to act in accordance with universal laws. For Kant, the ideal political system is a Rechtsstaat, a state governed by laws that ensure equal freedom for all citizens. Kant differentiates between republican and despotic forms of government. A republican government, in his view, upholds the separation of powers, ensuring that no single entity wields unchecked authority. Despotic governments, on the other hand, consolidate power and operate according to arbitrary will rather than universal law. Kant's commitment to legal and political structures that protect individual autonomy aligns him with classical liberalism, yet his emphasis on moral duty sets his political philosophy apart from purely utilitarian or interest-based theories. Of governance, the possibility of perpetual peace. Kant's vision for international relations is similarly grounded in his moral principles. In Perpetual Peace, he argues that lasting peace is not merely a utopian ideal, but a rational necessity. He outlines several conditions required for achieving this goal, including republican constitutions, a federation of free states, and adherence to principles of international law. Kant acknowledges that human self-interest often leads to conflict, yet he believes that the very pursuit of security and prosperity will ultimately encourage nations to adopt peaceful practices. A key mechanism in this process is commerce, which fosters interdependence among states. Kant anticipates that as economic interests become increasingly intertwined, nations will have practical incentives to avoid war. Furthermore, he suggests that historical progress exhibits a kind of teleology, an unfolding rational development, that, despite setbacks, tends toward greater justice and stability over time. Conclusion: Kant's philosophy remains one of the most comprehensive and influential intellectual systems in history. His critical philosophy reshaped epistemology, laying the groundwork for modern thought. His moral theory introduced a rigorous framework for ethical reasoning based on autonomy and duty. In political philosophy, he provided a vision of governance, rooted in law and freedom, while his reflections on international relations anticipated many contemporary discussions on global peace and cooperation. Ultimately, Kant's work represents an enduring effort to reconcile the demands of reason with the complexities of human experience. By recognizing both the limits and potential of human understanding, he sought to secure the foundations of knowledge, morality, and justice. Whether in metaphysics, ethics, or politics, Kant's insights continue to shape philosophical inquiry and remain indispensable to modern debates on reason, freedom, and the human condition. Summary of Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, 1781, revised 1787, is one of the most influential works in Western philosophy. In this book, Kant attempts to answer the fundamental question: what Can we know and how can we know it? Key themes and arguments. 1. A priori versus a posteriori. Knowledge. Kant distinguishes between two types of knowledge: a priori knowledge, knowledge that is independent of experience, e.g., mathematics, logic; a posteriori knowledge, knowledge derived from experience, e.g., empirical science. He also introduces two types of judgments: analytic judgments, statements that are true by definition, e.g., all bachelors are unmarried; synthetic judgments, statements that require experience to be known, e.g., the sun will rise tomorrow. Kant argues that there are synthetic a priori judgments, which are statements that expand knowledge but do not rely on experience, e.g., mathematical truths. The limits of pure reason. Kant challenges both rationalism, the idea that reason alone can give us knowledge, and empiricism, the idea that all knowledge comes from experience. He argues that our mind plays an active role in shaping our experience. The human mind does not passively receive information. It structures experience through built-in categories like cause and effect, space and time. We can never know things, in themselves, noumena, only how they appear to us, phenomena. Transcendental idealism. Kant's transcendental idealism suggests that space and time are not features of the external world, but rather forms imposed by our minds. We cannot perceive reality as it is, noumenal. Reality. We only experience phenomena, which are shaped by our cognitive faculties. Critique of metaphysics. Kant argues that traditional metaphysical debates, such as the existence of God, the soul, and free will, go beyond what pure reason can determine. He says, reason tries to apply concepts like cause and effect beyond experience, leading to contradictions, antinomies. Metaphysical speculation is unreliable because it lacks empirical verification. Conclusion. Kant's critique of pure reason reshaped philosophy by showing that the mind actively constructs knowledge. We can only know the world as it appears to us, not as it is in itself. Pure reason alone cannot answer ultimate metaphysical questions. His work laid the foundation for modern epistemology, philosophy of science and critical thinking.